The year is 1762, and the Russian Empire is in turmoil. Peter III, an erratic ruler with a taste for debauchery, has just died under mysterious circumstances. His wife, Catherine II, a cunning German princess, swiftly seized power, starting one of the longest and most brutal reigns in Russian imperial history. But while she consolidated her hold on the throne, establishing reforms that modernized Russia and expanded its borders, her private life took on a darker turn, a turn that shocked even seasoned courtiers with its intensity and weirdness. And at the center of this maelstrom of flesh and desire stood Poly, Catherine's close friend and alleged lover. Sergei Vsevolodovich Poly, or Polya, as Catherine affectionately called him, was no ordinary man. He was a former soldier, a valet turned confidant, a silent witness to Catherine's rise to power, and an active participant in her most intimate moments. Their relationship, however, remained shrouded in mystery, leaving historians and biographers to piece together fragments of a connection that defied the rigid norms of 18th-century Russia. What was Poly to Catherine? A mere servant, a trusted advisor, a secret lover, or something else entirely? This is a tale of a woman who had it all: power, adulation, and an insatiable appetite for forbidden pleasures. It is the story of a friendship that transcended boundaries, and a love that dared not speak its name. A love between two souls bound by an invisible thread in the gilded cage of the Russian imperial court. Let's start our story at the beginning. After seizing power, Catherine found herself in a precarious position. Her son Paul was too young to rule, and the nobility, wary of her swift descent, closely monitored her every move. Suddenly, the weight of an empire threatened to crush her. Amidst this turmoil, Poly emerged as a beacon of stability. He was not only her lover, but also her link to the common people, a reminder of the values she held dear. Together, they navigated the treacherous waters of courtly intrigue, finding solace in each other's company when the opulent halls of the Winter Palace echoed with treachery and deceit. Their friendship, however, was not without its challenges. The vast chasm between their social positions and the rigid protocols of the Russian court constantly threatened to pull them apart. Yet somehow they managed to forge a bond that defied convention and class, proving that love, in whatever form it takes, knows no bounds. Theirs was a unique bond, a shared understanding that transcended the superficialities of court life. While the nobility gossiped about the enigmatic valet and the Empress's unusual fondness for him, they remained oblivious to the depth of their connection, for in the depths of Catherine's heart, Poly held a place that no courtier could ever hope to fill. He was her confidant, her rock, the one person to whom she could be her true self, free from the constraints of being an empress. As their friendship deepened, so did the whispers in the palace. Rumors swirled about their late-night meetings, their shared laughter echoing through the long, cold corridors of the Winter Palace. These encounters were not merely intellectual discussions, but also passionate displays of affection, creating a bubble of genuine warmth in the midst of the court's icy politics. In these stolen moments, Catherine shed the heavy cloak of royalty, becoming simply a woman in love. Poly, too, found solace in Catherine's company, drawn to her intelligence, wit, and compassion. Their conversations ranged from philosophy to literature to the arts, with Catherine's infectious enthusiasm always leading them to new and exciting discoveries. For them, these encounters were not just about exchanging ideas, but also about sharing a love for learning that bound them together in a world that often felt cold and uncaring. But as their relationship blossomed, so did the danger surrounding them. The nobility, ever vigilant for any sign of weakness, saw Catherine's affection for Poly as a threat to their carefully constructed world. They viewed him as a commoner who had no place in their empress's life and sought to use this perceived slight to undermine Catherine's authority. Despite the risks, however, Catherine refused to be swayed. She recognized that in a world where everyone had an ulterior motive, Poly was the only person who had earned her trust and affection. His presence was a constant reminder of what was truly important to her: loyalty, honesty, and love. As the plot against Catherine intensified, Poli proved to be a steadfast ally, using his knowledge of the palace and its inhabitants to protect her. He became her eyes and ears, alerting her to any potential danger and standing by her side when the palace guards came for her. Their bond, forged in the fires of adversity, became unbreakable. When Catherine finally emerged from the palace, victorious and secure in her position, she knew that she owed much of her success to Poli. He had not only been her lover, but also her protector, her strategist, and her rock. However, the victory was bittersweet. Catherine ascended to the throne, but at what cost? The experience left her deeply scarred, changing her perspective on power, love, and the human condition. The events of that fateful day shook her to her core, forcing her to confront the darkest aspects of human nature. Catherine's journey through this ordeal was one of resilience and strength. She used her experience to fuel her reforms, determination to create a better world where such abuses of power would never repeat themselves. However, the scars of that day remained, a constant reminder of the fragility of power and the importance of human connection. Catherine's thoughts often drifted back to Poli, wondering if he, too, had survived the purge. The memory of his unwavering loyalty and steadfast love serving as a guiding light in the darkness. Years passed and the wounds of the past began to heal, but the shadow of that fateful day lingered. Catherine's reforms brought stability and prosperity to Russia, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The joy that once filled her life had been replaced by a deep sense of melancholy. She realized that her survival had come at a great cost: the loss of innocence, the corruption of her soul, and the absence of her one true love, Poli. One day, while strolling through the vast gardens of the Winter Palace, Catherine came across a small, secluded pond. Gazing at the still water, she was struck by the realization that she had survived. But at what cost? The years of hardship and betrayal had taken their toll on her psyche, leaving her disillusioned and weary. Catherine knew that she was powerful, respected and feared, yet she couldn't help but feel a profound sense of emptiness. The trappings of royalty, once so alluring, now felt like chains binding her to a life she no longer recognized. As the years slipped by, Catherine found herself increasingly isolated in the grand halls of the Winter Palace. The courtiers who once flocked to her court now kept their distance, sensing the darkness that had taken root in her heart. Catherine had become a shadow of her former self, consumed by grief and haunted by the memories of those lost. The grandeur of the palace, once a source of pride, now felt like a prison, its opulent walls closing in on her, suffocating her with their suffocating opulence. Catherine's spirit, once so vibrant and full of life, had been broken by the relentless march of time. The vitality that had been her hallmark was now just a fading memory, replaced by a deep sense of weariness and despair. She longed for the simplicity of the past, for the days when love and laughter echoed through the halls of the palace, instead of the whispers of fear and deceit. As the curtain fell on Catherine the Great's extraordinary life, one could not help but wonder about the choices that had led her down this path of power and pain. The legacy of a woman who had it all, but lost everything in the pursuit of her desires, continued to resonate through the ages. The grandeur of her accomplishments was undeniable, but the cost of her success was etched in the desolate landscape of her heart. The story of Catherine serves as a haunting reminder that even in the darkest of times, love can endure. However, it also underscores the profound impact of loss and the enduring power of grief. For, in the annals of history, there are few tragedies more heartbreaking than that of a soul as rich and complex as Catherine the Great, forever marked by the chilling spectre of a love she dared not speak its name. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. We'll see you next time. The once grand halls echoed with the moans of tortured souls, both literally and metaphorically. As the stench of stale waste permeated through the opulent decor, a stark contrast to the perfume that clung to Catherine's skin. She reveled in excess, pushing her pleasures to the point of pain. Noble courtiers, once proud symbols of their social standing, became mere players in her twisted game. Her gaze, sharp and calculating, saw through their facades, exploiting their ambitions and fears until they crumbled before her. Her lovers were not chosen for their intellect or ability to lead, but for their capacity to endure and perform. They were athletes of debauchery, each with a specific role to play in the macabre theater of her desires. First among them was Gregory Potemkin, a man who had become infamous not for his love affair with the Empress, but for the staggering amount of children he fathered with her. Their liaison, however, was far from a casual fling. In fact, when Catherine's obsession with him waned, Potemkin was exiled from her court. Yet he remained undeterred, writing letters to her that spoke of a love so deep it defied physical constraints. He claimed that his heart was hers, even as he caroused with other nobles, siring children with them. His rationale was chillingly pragmatic. He needed heirs to secure his lineage, heirs who would carry the blood of the royal family within them, making them invaluable pawns in the game of power. His devotion, if that's what it could be called, was unnerving, and when Catherine eventually took him back, it was under the guise of an official position. She made him a member of her Privy Council, a decision that raised eyebrows but was ultimately overlooked due to the influence he wielded over the Empress. But Potemkin was only one act in the grotesque play that unfolded within the palace walls. There were others who served different purposes in Catherine's twisted game. A mysterious figure known as Madame de Nizhoroy arrived at the Russian court with little fanfare, yet she quickly became one of the most influential figures there. Her specialty was seduction, preying on young, impressionable men and leading them into Catherine's waiting arms. Her methods were insidious, using her charm and wit to manipulate and entrap. She had an uncanny knack for identifying those with potential, those whose naivety and ambition could be exploited to serve the Empress's whims. Once selected, these men were drawn into a world of luxury and excess, where their roles were to indulge Catherine's appetites, both physical and psychological. It was a dangerous game, one that required absolute discretion and unwavering compliance. Madame de Nizhoroy was the puppeteer, pulling the strings from the shadows, ensuring that the Empress's needs were met without ever stepping into the light herself. Her importance to Catherine was immeasurable, as she served as a vital link in the chain of power, connecting the Empress to the young nobles who were sacrificed on the altar of her desires. However, there were also whispers of a darker side to the Madame's influence, rumors that she held secrets over Catherine that could bring the Empress's carefully constructed world crashing down. What exactly these secrets entailed remained shrouded in mystery, adding an air of danger and intrigue to an already volatile situation. This created an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty within the court, as any misstep could result not only in the ruin of one's reputation, but possibly the loss of life itself. The full extent of Catherine's depravity, however, was revealed through her intimate journals. These documents, penned in her own hand, laid bare her thoughts, desires, and fears, painting a chilling portrait of a woman teetering on the edge of sanity. The entries were a disturbing mix of mundane details about court life and shocking confessions of her sexual exploits. There were lists of men she wanted to seduce, detailed accounts of her trysts, and even diagrams of bizarre sexual practices she wished to experiment with. These writings were not merely a testament to her wild lifestyle, but a glimpse into the psyche of a woman who sought pleasure to escape the crushing weight of her responsibilities as Empress. Each page was a confession, a release of the demons that plagued her waking hours, finding solace in the darkness of her own mind. Yet amidst all this chaos and excess, there were those who dared to defy Catherine. Men of the cloth stood as beacons of opposition, challenging her indulgences and calling for moderation in her lifestyle. However, their pleas fell on deaf ears, lost in the tempest of her desires. Catherine was beyond reason, intoxicated by the very excess that threatened to consume her. These religious figures, with their calls for restraint and piety, were seen as enemies of the Empress, obstacles in her path to unrestrained pleasure. As a result, they paid a heavy price for their defiance, often facing exile or worse. Catherine's thirst for pleasure knew no bounds, and she pursued it with the same relentless fervor that had propelled her to the throne. She threw herself into a life of luxury and excess, surrounded by the trappings of power and the company of willing participants in her twisted game. Her apartments became a sanctuary of sin, where the boundaries between day and night blurred, replaced by the rhythms of desire and abandon. Here, away from the prying eyes of the court, she indulged in the darkest recesses of her imagination, shielded by the very opulence that had become her trademark. Within these gilded cages, she found a perverse freedom, a release from the constraints of her royal obligations. For Catherine, the night was never truly dark enough to hide her indulgences, nor the day too bright to conceal them. Every hour was an opportunity to blur the lines between reality and fantasy, between virtue and debauchery. She reveled in this ambiguity, thriving in the gray areas where morality had no hold. As the years passed, the whispers about her grew louder, echoing through the hallowed halls of the Winter Palace, carrying tales of unimaginable excesses and unholy rituals. Yet, despite the mounting murmurs, Catherine remained defiant. She continued to push the boundaries of propriety, reveling in the scandal and intrigue that followed her like a shadow. Her appetite for pleasure became a force of nature, unstoppable and unyielding. Her personal physician, the man entrusted with her health and well-being, found himself drawn into the vortex of her desires. He became a reluctant participant in her twisted games, bound by a combination of professional duty and fear. His knowledge of medicine was put to strange and disturbing uses, serving not to heal but to enhance Catherine's capacity for perverse pleasure. Procedures that should have been confined to the realm of experimentation became part of her regular routine. The sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship was violated as the line between treatment and torture became alarmingly thin. In the dimly lit chambers of the Winter Palace, amidst the scent of exotic perfumes and stale waste, he carried out tasks that would haunt his nightmares. Under Catherine's watchful eye, he administered concoctions that heightened her senses to unbearable levels, transforming ordinary sensations into excruciating experiences. He watched as she writhed in agony and ecstasy, her cries echoing the torment of his own soul. With each passing day, he descended deeper into the abyss of Catherine's madness, his humanity slipping away as he became a mere instrument in her symphony of pain and pleasure. The once esteemed physician became a collaborator in her descent into darkness, his legacy forever tainted by the secrets he held and the horrors he had witnessed behind the closed doors of the Winter Palace. But even as the walls of the Winter Palace bore silent witness to her excesses, there were those who dared to venture closer, drawn by morbid curiosity or a thirst for forbidden knowledge. They came from all walks of life, nobles seeking to curry favor, scholars hungry for scandalous tales, and commoners simply curious about the shadowed goings-on in the heart of their Empress's domain. Despite the risks, they infiltrated her sanctum, observing from a distance, piecing together fragments of her nightly revels, and then retreating into the safety of anonymity, carrying with them the echoes of what they had seen and heard. As the years went by, these first-hand accounts wove themselves into the fabric of the city, becoming part of the urban folklore. Each whispered story added another layer to the enigma of the Winter Palace, transforming it from a symbol of imperial grandeur into a vessel of unspeakable depravity. The palace, once a testament to Russia's glory, became shrouded in an aura of darkness, its majestic facade concealing a grotesque underbelly of unchecked indulgence and unholy rites. The Winter Palace turned into a labyrinth of intrigue and terror, where power and lust intertwined in a deadly dance, and the secrets, whispered in the shadows, held the power to destroy empires. Russia, in the late 18th century, was an empire on the rise. Its borders were expanding, its wealth was growing, and its culture was flourishing. But behind the scenes, the picture was far from idyllic. For the last years of Catherine the Great's reign were descending into a madness so complete that reality itself seemed to bend around her imperial will, transforming the Russian court into a carnival of horrors, that would haunt the collective memory of a nation for generations to come. Catherine's story is well known. She came to power in 1762 after deposing her husband, Peter III, and over the next 3 decades, she ruled Russia with an iron fist, expanding its territory, modernizing its institutions, and amassing great wealth. But beneath the surface of this seemingly successful reign, there was a growing darkness. For as Catherine grew older, her obsession with maintaining her youth and sexual vitality became more and more desperate. And when it became clear that no earthly means could stop the relentless march of time, she turned to the occult, seeking forbidden knowledge and unholy pacts to cheat both nature and God himself. Her first folly was seeking out the infamous Albanian woman, Ortiz de Pusiatin, who had gained notoriety for her supposed ability to rejuvenate the skin and restore vigor to aging nobles. Catherine, ever eager to try anything for beauty, became a regular at her salon, enduring painful treatments involving animal fats and strange unguents that smelled like sulfur and decay. While the results were initially pleasing, soon the stench followed the Empress everywhere, and her ladies-in-waiting complained bitterly of the stench. But Catherine was willing to endure much for her beauty, and so she continued visiting Ortiz until the unfortunate incident with the horse. This tale, while likely apocryphal, has become an indelible stain on Catherine's reputation. It goes as follows. One night, while Catherine was dining with a group of courtiers, she suddenly began to feel unwell. Gasping for air, she excused herself and stumbled into a nearby stable. There, overcome with a strange desire, she stripped naked and mounted a horse, forcing it to serve as a mechanical bull. Riding the animal with wild abandon, she shrieked with laughter, completely oblivious to the horrified stares of the grooms who witnessed her depravity. This incident, whether real or imagined, became emblematic of the Empress's descent into madness, and rumors of her bizarre behavior spread throughout the empire, tainting the image of the once revered monarch. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Historians generally agree that the horse story is almost certainly a fabrication, concocted by Catherine's enemies to damage her reputation. After all, it was widely circulated by the very same individuals who sought to tarnish her legacy. However, dismissing the tale outright would be a mistake, for it emerged from a court culture so steeped in sexual deviance that such a story, while outrageous, seemed not only plausible but almost inevitable. Catherine surrounded herself with sycophants and courtiers who indulged in the most extreme forms of debauchery, and she participated in many of their activities with an enthusiasm that shocked even the most jaded members of her court. Documents unearthed from the palace archives reveal a staggering litany of expenditures for exotic animals, elaborate mechanical contraptions, and mysterious substances imported from the darkest corners of the Ottoman Empire. Exotic animals, including apes, elephants, and even mummies, were brought to the palace, their purposes carefully veiled in euphemism and coded language. Mechanical contraptions, some designed to resemble animals, others to mimic human forms, were constructed at great expense, their true functions never revealed to outsiders. Mysterious substances imported from the Middle East under false pretenses were rumored to be used in alchemical experiments and bizarre rituals. These are just some of the elements that help paint a shockingly vivid picture of the twisted world Catherine inhabited during her final years. While we cannot know for sure what these contraptions and substances were used for, one thing is certain: they played a key role in Catherine's descent into madness. For the Empress had fallen under the sway of a group of occultists and alchemists who promised her eternal pleasure in exchange for unspeakable acts that violated every sacred boundary of Russian orthodoxy. According to the secret records that have survived to the present day, the disgraced alchemist Ivan Sekhenov found favor in Catherine's eyes after successfully concocting a substance that rendered her skin unnaturally smooth and elastic. Over time, he and his associates grew bolder, convincing the Empress to allow them to perform experiments in the palace involving human and animal remains, as well as strange substances derived from the secretions of insects and reptiles. The goal, according to their cryptic writings, was to create a rejuvenating elixir that would grant Catherine immortality by transferring the life essence of the young and innocent into her own withered veins. As the years passed, these dark rituals grew increasingly grotesque. The alchemist's writings speak of nights when the Empress willingly submerged herself in vats of putrid liquids, giggling uncontrollably as the flesh around her wrinkled and sagged. Then, when the vats were drained and her courtiers peered inside, they saw that the liquid had taken on the exact color and texture of her own blood. Was it a horrifying premonition of the fate that awaited her? We may never know. But these disturbing accounts offer a glimpse into the depths of Catherine's depravity. By the 1790s, her obsession with her appearance had consumed her entirely, driving her to violate every tenet of her faith and common sense in a desperate bid to stay young and sexually attractive. The end result was an utter physical and psychological collapse. While the official record attributes Catherine's death to a stroke, those close to her at the time whispered that it was the work of God himself, finally exacting vengeance for sins so profound that they had finally exhausted even his infinite capacity for forgiveness. After all, her physicians discovered physical conditions upon her autopsy that they could not explain through natural causes alone, as if her body itself had been transformed by the darkness she had embraced throughout her reign. Her demise, however it came, was both swift and terrible. Witnesses to her final moments reported that she lapsed into a coma-like state, speaking incoherently in languages no one recognized, her voice taking on tones that seemed to emerge from somewhere far deeper than any human throat could produce. Some swore that she uttered the names of ancient deities long forgotten by the civilized world, while others claimed her words aligned with prophecies of the apocalypse contained in obscure texts. Whatever the truth may have been, her final words sent a chill through every listener, foretelling a fate worse than death for anyone foolish enough to follow in her wake. When Catherine's physician, Dr. Gustave Menassi, published a report of her autopsy, he carefully omitted any mention of her more disturbing ailments, focusing instead on the stroke and its consequences. However, rumors of unnatural goings-on at the palace persisted, and many believed that the truth of Catherine's demise lay buried in the vaults of the Imperial Medical Academy, hidden away to protect the reputation of the once great Empress. Even today, when historians examine these sealed documents, many are said to leave them unread, understanding instinctively that some knowledge carries too high a price for human sanity. For while Catherine's story is one of unparalleled ambition and success, her true legacy lies not in the lands she conquered or the reforms she implemented, but in the chilling proof she provided that absolute power, when combined with unlimited appetite, can transform even the most civilized soul into something that transcends the very definition of human wickedness. In Catherine the Great's case, her insatiable appetites ultimately overwhelmed her reason, dragging her into a vortex of madness from which there was no escape. As her grip on reality loosened, she reveled in the darkest excesses of the flesh, embracing a world of pain, filth, and decay that mirrored the corruption spreading within her own soul. In doing so, she proved that no matter how great our accomplishments or how noble our origins, the basest instincts can corrupt even the brightest flame. Her story serves as a warning for all who seek power, reminding us that even the greatest empires built on the foundation of lust and debauchery will inevitably crumble into dust. Let her tormented visage forever haunt our nightmares, a grim reminder of the price we may pay when we surrender ourselves to the darkest depths of our desires. Today, when scholars venture into the labyrinthine stacks of the Imperial Russian archives, seeking lost histories from the age of Catherine the Great, they often find themselves confronted by documents whose contents are so vile and disturbing that they must be sealed away lest the light of day sully their profane contents. These sealed archives contain graphic descriptions of the most extreme forms of depravity, as well as disturbing accounts of events so horrific that they have been deliberately erased from the historical record. Among the most disturbing of these are the wax tablets recovered from the ruins of Oranienbaum Palace. the summer residence of Catherine and her close circle of courtiers. Upon these tablets, alchemical recipes are scrawled alongside disturbing illustrations depicting the Empress submerged in putrid liquids and surrounded by emaciated figures engaged in unspeakable acts. These unsettling artifacts suggest a level of ritualistic behavior so perverse that it defies easy comprehension, yet offers a tantalizing glimpse into the feverish minds of Catherine's court. One such document, known simply as the Green Book, outlines a series of complex procedures involving the distillation of animal fats and the creation of poultices from ground insect larvae and other substances of dubious origin. The Green Book's disturbing illustrations depict courtiers undergoing strange trials that test their strength and endurance, while being observed by a hooded figure widely believed to represent Catherine herself. What purpose these tests served or what secrets they unlocked remains unknown, but their sheer grotesqueness suggests that Catherine's court willingly subjected themselves to unimaginable horrors in pursuit of arcane knowledge. Other sealed documents hint at darker practices still, with rumors suggesting that human sacrifice played a role in the court's blasphemous rituals. Supposed eyewitness accounts speak of hooded figures dragged through the palace halls, bearing trays adorned with what appeared to be freshly severed human limbs and organs. The sight of these processions was so disturbing that many courtiers suffered nervous breakdowns, while others fled the empire in terror, never to return. These disturbing accounts form only a fraction of what is contained within the sealed archives. Many scholars who have examined these documents claim that even a cursory glance at their contents is enough to send a chill down one's spine, as if the very pages themselves are tainted by the darkness they describe. For Catherine the Great, her descent into the abyss of depravity was both self-inflicted and orchestrated by a coterie of sinister advisors who preyed upon her worsening mental state. Her obsession with maintaining her beauty and sexual allure drove her to seek out the darkest forms of magic and forbidden knowledge, which ultimately corrupted her mind and sealed her fate. As her grip on reality loosened, she reveled in the basest excesses of the flesh, surrounding herself with creatures and substances that defied the laws of nature in an attempt to cheat the natural order. In doing so, she embraced the very forces of chaos and decay that would ultimately consume her, proving that no matter how great our ambitions or how privileged our station, the relentless march of time and the inexorable pull of our basest instincts can overwhelm even the most resolute spirit. What do you think? Were Catherine's actions the result of a slowly deteriorating mental state, or was she simply incorrigibly vain and depraved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like and share if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.